You're on.
It is 6:30. I'm calling to order the regular council meeting for Tuesday, March 21st, 2023. Before we start our roll call tonight, there's one new change. If you wish to speak tonight during our council or our citizen comments, there is a form over here that we ask you to fill out and hand to Ms. Monroe over there, and that way she has the information and she will call you up when it's time. So that is the one change we have. Tracy, if you could call a roll call.
Mayor Don Barnard.
Here.
John Merriman.
Here.
Sharon Hendren.
Here.
Charlie Campbell.
Here.
Nicole Shook.
Here.
Bob Orsini.
Here.
Ryan Green.
Here. If we could have Pastor Larry Griffin from the Johnstown Baptist Church, he's going to lead us in invocation tonight.
Thank you very much. They're standing up, they think this is going to be short or long, I don't know. First, before I pray, I want to thank you for the invitation to share in this invocation. I've been practicing that, so I just wanted to say it, make sure I got it right. Also, some of you have been around a little bit of time with the village. Paul Rohr, former employee, I believe, on the grounds maintenance crew, died last night. And I just wanted to be sure you heard that information. This is not the first time I prayed for the council. We pray for you regularly, that God would give you grace, that He might give you wisdom, and He might give you courage. So the prayer tonight is quite simple. You've got two words to say with energy. The first one is the word thanks, and the second is the word yes. For all that has been, we give thanks. And for all that is yet to come, we say
Yes.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tonight for the Pledge of Allegiance, since it is Women's National History Month, we have invited the Girl Scout troop to lead us in Pledge Allegiance tonight. We have Avery Strausser, Charlie Hardin, Charlotte King, Claire Orsini, Morgan Calicote, Murphy Yeager, Sawyer Wright, Tegan Coffey, Tegan McGough, Zama DeWitt, and the adult leaders are Daniel Harden. Thank you very much for coordinating this. Bethany King and Tiffany McGuff. And girls or ladies, thank you so much for coming and doing this again. And thank you for all you're doing. It's on you guys now. Thank you so much.
Much better. That was way. We missed one girl.
We missed.
Reese Moore.
And Reese Moore was also here today. Thank you, Reese.
Thank you, Reese.
Thank you, girls.
I saw a disappointed. They did a wave. They did a wave and
Next on the agenda tonight is update on Licking County energy aggregation. Commissioner Tim Bubb, thank you for coming tonight.
The ladies exit. That was an inspiring invocation and a very nice pledge. Mayor, members, what I'd like to do, and I apologize for having my back to you, but what I'd like to do is just give you a quick update on the energy aggregation that we entered into collectively just over a year ago. And I brought with me my friend Bob Snavely with Palmer Energy. He's the professional, one of the professionals that we work with, because some of you are a little newer than others. Not everyone here was on the council a year ago when we talked about this, but we brought, the county commissioners brought to Johnstown, along with 6 other communities, Newark, Heath, Pataskala, Alexandria, Hanover, and St. Louisville, the opportunity to join in a coalition to seek electric and natural gas aggregation. Bottom line is the effort is to save you all money. People that live in the Johnstown city corporate limits that are not members of the energy co-op will have every opportunity to save money. And it was a unanimous council decision just over a year ago to place the issues on the ballot. Sharon remembers that. Ryan remembers that. And it was successful. The people of this community voted for aggregation, and so we went to work. Your previous mayor and now your current mayor sits on our advisory committee. And the 6 communities that approved aggregation, about 70,000 households in Licking County and small businesses will be subject to this. It's a little bit of a paperwork nightmare. That's why we coalesced into one unified group under the county umbrella so that 6 communities weren't having to do all the paperwork, which is kind of extensive with the PUCO to get approval, but we did. And by September of last year, we had the permission to aggregate both electric and natural gas by the RFP process, basically going out into the open market and seeking competitive bids for fuel prices. And that's where we save money when you think about it for aggregation. It's not in the delivery. American Electric Power and or Columbia Gas or whoever your utility is delivers the product and you pay them to deliver it. But the bigger part of your bill is your fuel cost. And that varies from person to person. But basically, the idea behind aggregation is to get competitive pricing in the open market less than what the utility would charge you. Lock that price in for a period of time, and that's reflected in your fuel costs with a lesser cost for your bill. I'm here to tell every one of you, I mentioned, I think a year ago when we talked about this, I said this is one of the few opportunities where a village or a city council can do something that physically can put money back in the pockets of your residents and actually benefit them. That's one thing to be a promise. Well, it's a reality now. We have since, as the mayor is aware, we have now contracted both with, and we'll get Bob to talk about it in just a moment briefly. We have contracted for both electric fuel discounts and natural gas fuel discounts that will take effect in the second quarter of this year that will benefit all of your residents. He can talk about the price, but I can tell every one of you, and I'll tell you it's a secret, so don't tell anybody. But the American Electric Power prices are going to nearly double this summer just because of the market that they're in. They're going to be in that 10 to 11 cent. We've locked in a price at 6.4, Bob?
624.
624. Prices for your residents who are electric customers starting this summer will be almost half what they'll be for other people. You will all be heroes for that, for bringing that issue forward, and for the people of Johnstown doing that. It's always nice when you're a county commissioner and you can bring good news. And if you don't see that as good news, you will this summer when people hear it and feel it. And this is for residential and for small business. Process is, are you comfortable with aggregation, Mayor? Do you want me to say more about the process?
I think we're good.
Everybody's pretty familiar with it at this point? Okay. Where we're at is that we've contracted now, and we're sort of at that what they call the opt-out stage. If you remember, one of the questions that came up in this room, and it may have come up from residents during the election last year, if I don't want to be an aggregator, can I opt out? And the answer is yes, you can opt out for free at any time. But the law actually requires that we send a letter to all of your folks who have meters and explain the opt-out process so that right now up front, if they don't want to take advantage of aggregation, you'd have to kind of be a fool not to, unless you really enjoy paying more. Got a copy of it so you can see it. But we want you to see it because I think you will hear it from your residents, constituents, neighbors, and other people. Hey, I got this letter. It basically comes from Licking County, and it talks about how if I don't want to aggregate, how you opt out. And there are 3 easy ways to do it. We make this very simple, and you can read about it on the second page, but basically I believe you can go to a website, if I'm correct. You can return this form, you can make a phone call, or you can go to a website and opt out, and they'll just leave you on the utility price, and you can have fun and pay the utility price all you want, and that's fine. If not, because the community voted to aggregate, that means that everybody's in the pool unless you opt out, so everyone benefits from that unless they choose to opt out. But because people will get the letter and they may ask you, what's this all about, or what does that mean? And that's the simple explanation. Anyone doesn't have to aggregate. It's a free country. If you'd rather pay a larger price and stay with the utility, you can do that. You can opt out. I would urge you to stay with the aggregation that we've done as collectively as communities through the county and opt in and take advantage of the price for the next 2.5 or 3 years. Do you have any questions for me? That's kind of quick, and I don't mean to, I know you've got a lot on your agenda tonight, but I just wanted to bring you that news personally. I shared it with your clerk because she asked about it the other day and wanted to bring some of this information forward along with the mayor because he's been listening in at some of our meetings. But I personally wanted to come up and just tell you what we've done exactly. It's to everyone's advantage that lives here that has, unless you have a special deal, unless you're already under a contractor, unless you're in the energy cooperative, you stand to benefit from this.
Does this include the township? I mean,
No,
Oh, it does.
city.
how can the township get involved?
The township of Monroe would have to, I don't want to say any more at this point,
Okay.
but there's a couple ways that could happen. One way it could happen is that there are already 4 townships in Licking County that have aggregation. They are major townships in western Licking County: Etna, Harrison, Union, and Granville. Through the years, those 4 major townships have already voted and done what you all just did last year, voted to aggregate, and they've had either electric and gas both, or at least electric. I know on the ballot this year, Granville Township and Village has only had electric, and we, the county, have urged them, why aren't you looking at natural gas too? And they are, and they put it on their ballot. So there are townships that already have it. I believe we have 26 townships in Licking County. 4 of them currently aggregate, but they're major townships, so 22, including Monroe, do not. To be honest with you, I'd like to see Monroe, St. Albans, just this entire corridor do it. You can do it individually, but I'll tell you, straight up, the other way we can do it, the county commissioners have the authority in the unincorporated areas, not the villages or cities, to also put it on the ballot for townships that don't aggregate that are unincorporated. It's something we're going to consider. Rather than do it in 22 different townships, if we can save money in these villages and cities, and they can save money in those major townships, that represents over half of Licking County. Frankly, why shouldn't everyone benefit from this to some extent? So Sharon, I appreciate the question. It's something that we're going to deal with after the election. Personally, I'd like to see the issue on the ballot for Licking County to take all the townships to aggregation, simply because you can save some money for people. And here's the advantage for Johnstown City. It's the advantage for Newark, it's the advantage for Heath, it's the advantage for everybody that got in on this. It leaves money on the table in your community for people to buy school lunches, buy fuel, whatever. And if collectively, it's small amounts of money for each person. Incrementally, when you take 70,000 households times a couple $100 a year and do the math over a period of time, you leave several $1 million on the table in Licking County that doesn't go for energy fuel. It stays here to support the local economy. That's a great deal. And it's taking advantage of the state law to do this. And it's been a lot of work, I can tell you. Mayor, I can tell you it's been a lot of work doing the paperwork. Palmer's done a lot of the work for us. They're smart people. That's what they do. And just so you'll know why we picked Palmer Energy, and then I'll let it go. The county commissioners, we have been aggregating all of our facilities through there's 88 counties in Ohio, and about 65 of them have joined together in a huge aggregation around the state of Ohio. We use Palmer to aggregate for all of our facilities, major facilities like courthouses, jails, water and sewer plants, and that sort of thing. We've saved millions through the years. We really have. And these folks do it in communities across the state. Palmer, the company that we brought, that we work with, is the only group. They don't sell energy. They're facilitators to make this process happen, to bid the process and do the paperwork, do the legwork, do the hard, heavy lifting to make it happen. They're the only group that is recommended exclusively by both the Ohio Municipal League, which is part of your conglomerate, and all the counties of Ohio, the County Commissioners Association, because their track record is such that they're that good. So I feel good about where we're at with them. Do you have any other questions?
This, I want to remind everybody, if who's listening or who's here, this is only in Johnstown for the AEP customers. The
Right.
co-op customers
Correct.
do not get this same deal, so.
And the reason why is something like Energy Co-op, the energy co-ops were for farm and rural communities, they're owner-operated cooperatives. Every person who is a customer is also an owner, and they have their own democratic process, and they're not governed by the PUCO, so they actually can aggregate themselves and have been for a long time. They go into the market already before we ever talked about this, and they competitively buy energy. So they already aggregate. So this doesn't apply to them, but they've already had the benefit. You're catching up with them. This is the easiest way to look at it.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. I want to, if I may, Mayor,
Yes, sir.
just introduce Mr. Snavely for just a moment to just talk a little bit about the opt-out and the prices that we've got locked in for Johnstown coming up. Would
Yes,
you
sir.
do that, Bob?
Yeah, sure. Mayor, Council, thanks for having me in today. Bob Snavely with Palmer Energy. As Commissioner kind of went over the numbers a little bit with you, the current deal will start in May, and opt-out letters go out next week. So this is what I just handed out is the actual opt-out letter, and I have plenty for the crowd here too if they'd like to have one. So this letter will be mailed to your constituents, and if they don't do anything, they're in the program. If there's, as Commissioner mentioned, there's 3 ways to opt out: mail, phone, or web. But it's a pretty good deal. As Commissioner also mentioned, the standard service offer with AEP Energy is going to significantly rise in June, which will be on your July bill, and it's going to go from what is currently 6 cents, almost 7 cents, to over 10. And our price is locked in through December of 2025 at 6.2 cents. So a really significant savings versus the utility. And it's something that I would think will be a topic of conversation here come July. For the folks that are directly with the utility, again, you don't have to do anything to get in. If you do have a third-party agreement, so you've gone out and signed a contract on your own, you're not automatically enrolled. We can't interrupt a contract that has already been put in place. But if you can leave that contract without fees, or if you find the fees beneficial to pay it and then leave and join the aggregation, you can do that. There's no fee to leave. There's no fee to join. Commissioner mentioned a little bit about natural gas. We do have natural gas aggregation in place as well. That's going to start in June. I don't have a copy of that aggregation letter. It hasn't been formulated yet. It will shortly. That will start in June. We waited a while for both electric and gas because the market was significantly higher at the end of last year and really has come down substantially starting basically January of this year. And to the tune of the natural gas market, touched about $10 in the November-December timeframe. And right now it's trading right around $2.50. So we're looking at like a 70% decline. When we saw that happen, then we decided now's a good time to move. We locked in the electric rate, and then, as I mentioned, we locked in gas as well at $5.78, and that will be through IGS Energy, who's the supplier, through May of 2025. So the opt-out letter will be coming from them in the probably April to May timeframe.
So there'll be 2 opt-out letters?
Yep.
Okay.
For both electric and gas. Any questions for me? I know Commissioner did a great job of explaining it. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate your help.
Commissioner Bob, can I ask you a question real quick?
Sure.
Not to mean to put you on the hot seat, but I'd be remiss to ask you if you could fill council and the residents who are watching, because it's a very popular topic. It's a very popular conversation piece. But the agreement the commissioners entered in with the water, with Southwest Licking, can you explain if there's a way to opt out of that for townships around here? What is the process of that? We've heard many different things. We wanted to get your thoughts on it and what's going on with it right now.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting also you have Structure Point here tonight, because I'm kind of curious to hear what they're doing, because as you well know, they're doing quite a bit of background work in terms of utility service in Licking County. And for us at the county level, utility is an interesting thing, because in every corner of the county, not just in this corner of the county, the provision of water and sewer is an interesting subject, both renovating and expanding the systems we've got and extending them. The agreement that basically we gave the Southwest Community Water and Sewer District the opportunity to expand into Jersey Township, which was welcomed there, into part of St. Albans and into the bottom of Monroe Township. That is an option for them. There's an awful lot of background discussion going on, some of which we're party to, some that we're not. Some of that involves New Albany, some of it involves Columbus and utilities. There are a lot of potential providers. It doesn't, in our view, preclude Johnstown expanding in that direction or extending utility service in that direction. It also really doesn't preclude New Albany doing what they want to do with Columbus and or other possibilities. But we did open the door for the potential arrival of service in all or part of that area if they're able to do it by the Southwest Community Water and Sewer District. It's a contract which we can mutually agree to pull back on that, but at the moment, there's no need to do that. Right now, we think it's a fair arrangement for them to see what they can do. They're making some planning in that region, and we'll see how it works out. But we can certainly renegotiate that, rethink about it. We're certainly open to any concerns that Johnstown has and or any interest that Johnstown has in extending service in that direction as well. The bottom line is that we're all subject to probably a decade of interesting development in the region, and not much of it happens, whether it's residential, and you're going to feel the pressure on all sides of the city from that, and the pressure on your own utilities as they develop and as they're expanded here. So we understand that. We're looking forward to the work that Structure Point's doing, kind of giving some thought to water and sewer provision and how it can play out going forward. And there is also some discussion about creating, if you're familiar with the Transportation Improvement District, which is a planning district, the TID, Sean's aware of it. The TID exists to basically help manage the expansion of highway development in the area, marshaling private sector money, state money, and local money. And there's actually some talk about an equivalent TID for water and sewer in Licking County, because frankly, a county of this size and under this much development pressure, which we are, this is not a new subject. It's been a subject for the last 20 years that I've been a commissioner in a lot of places. In fact, we just spent about $34 million in ARPA dollars across the county, including here in Johnstown, doing water and sewer expansion. And to be honest with every one of you, if we had $100 million, we could spend that as well. These plants are very expensive to do, as you well know, just with the expansion here of your utilities in the city. So that's a long-winded answer to essentially, we're working with you, we're working to try to fill the void sort of in that unincorporated region that's feeling development pressure. And as you all know, there's a lot of things going on in St. Albans Township in Jersey, and to a certain extent, I suppose, in Monroe, even though it's a little different ballgame in terms of kind of adapting to the growth and controlling the growth with joint economic development districts and some TIFs and some things that allow people to sort of draw a line in the sand and define where there'll be development, where there won't. And, you know, the truth of the matter is, especially in Jersey, in that area that was annexed, or half of it annexed into New Albany, essentially it was unserved. One of the things that made Jersey attractive for Intel and for the expansion was that it was farmland that was readily available, but it also, from a road and highway standpoint and infrastructure standpoint, was virtually undeveloped. So that's the big challenge. It's going to be the challenge for all of us in the next few years, is the highway expansion that's needed, and the utility and the fiber expansion. And no easy answers to it. There's an awful lot of people working on it right now, Mayor. You know that. And you guys have the good fortune of being just a mile up the road. Here it is. Sometimes when I look at Intel, I think about it, you know, coming into that summer, that summer and fall when they were driving around Licking County, among other states, looking at the opportunities, and they finally put their finger on Licking County in December of that year, 2021, and announced in 2022. Sometimes I kind of analogize that to we weren't sure we were in the World Series, and all of a sudden we hit a grand slam. So here we are. We hit the grand slam, but now for the next decade, we're going to be trying to catch up with it. And so thanks we look forward to working with you.
Thank you for being willing to answer the question for us tonight, so.
Yeah, we'll do our very best, and call me anytime.
Yes, sir.
We'll work with you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda tonight is contractual planning, or planner discussion. We first have American Structure Point, if they'd like to come up and give us their presentation.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Nice to see some of you again. Talking through it, and talking to staff a little bit. We've been discussing the idea of possibly supplementing your efforts and your staff's efforts.
sir.
Take on and review zoning applications. We know there's a lot going on. I think we just talked about some detail. There's a lot of things happening, and some bolstering your efforts to be able to react to that, especially as things grow around you, near you, and you start implementing the vision that you're working on right now to create a comprehensive plan. Just to provide a little bit of information on who we are, my name is Matthew O'Rourke. I'm the Planning and Economic Development Group Leader with American Structure Point, and as it relates to what we're talking about this evening, I cut my teeth in the public sector. I was in the public sector majority of my career for 15 years. Started that right out of the University of Cincinnati in Ball State, where I got my graduate degree. And basically, I've reviewed everything from a fence permit all the way up through big TIF deals and dimensional, PUD regulations and all those things related to retail, housing, industrial. The first place I worked for was a very fast-growing community on the edge of the Chicago suburbs. It was the next one up in that wave of development. And at one point, we were doing something to the effect of 8 million square feet of logistics centers, 1,200 residential units a year, and all the retail that comes with that. So been in this business a long time, really love doing this work. I like to say zoning, one of the things I really love about reviewing permits and special use applications in a weird sort of way is that it's a bit of a math problem. It's kind of a challenge, Anybody that's looked at a conditional use permit, even in a downtown building, there's all these little nuances. You got to add up, okay, does the use make sense? Oh, no, it's a conditional use. All right, we need to go through a process for that. All right, but first, do they have enough parking spaces? Do they meet the ordinance there? Do we have to think through that? Or are there access issues? Oh, wait, there's a church across the street. Are they asking for a liquor license? There's all these fun little things we got to get through. So we're here to talk about how we can help, bring that experience and leverage that to help Johnstown out as, they move into the next few years of some heavy growth. And with me here is Ashley, and she's going to give you a little bit of experience and background as well. Awesome.
Thank you, Matt. Again, my name is Ashley Noonan, and thank you for the privilege to speak with the village tonight. Similar to Matt's experience, I have the kind of full range zoning experience. For 3 years, I was working with a county in Indiana. I guess more germane to the village here is that I worked for 4 years with the city of Columbus as a zoning administration standpoint. So from those two experiences, I have the knowledge of the legal framework of what's expected for somebody in that zoning reviewer position, preparing findings of facts and performing that technical plan review, what to look for, how to cross-reference the documents, how to build those relationships within governing municipal administration to make sure that the municipality's interests are protected while remaining a community partner with the applicants that I would deal with. And then, looking at the comprehensive plan, again, looking at this comprehensively to understand and the spirit of the law, as well as past case law and seeing how, not only looking at the application in front of me, but also looking ahead of how this will have implications in the future. More recently, I've worked in the private sector, so she's been on the front. And working for national retail client programs and also small developers, advising them on how to go through and navigate the permitting process, as well as how to present zoning cases and variances. So I have that applicant perspective as well, like I said, to be a partner with the applicants if under the privilege to your community. So again, I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So Ashley's here, and we're here to answer any questions about our resumes. Just wanted you to know there's multiple people in our firm. We've sort of built our practice around having ample public sector experience and leveraging that as we do all of our work. Just we know what it's like to be in your seats and your staff seats and have that empathy and have been there for things. We have a very deep bench of professionals that we have pretty much all handled every kind of situation you can think of, whether it be annexations, PUD requests, small zoning variances, all the way up to the very large, downtown redevelopments. Pretty much our staff has worked on all those things. We're here to see what we can do to help Johnson out as they move in the future. So,
Okay.
we're happy to answer any questions you might have.
Anyone have any questions, Nick? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have MKSK for the same discussion tonight.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Chris Herman. I'm a principal with MKSK. But just let me say, with American Structure Point here, that they're a great firm. We work with them on other projects, so they would do very well. But provide you with another option. We've also provided a proposal to do continuing planning services for the city of Johnstown. I would be probably the main backstop, and then Trevor, who you've met, would be the planner that would be working directly with you. But I think in large part because I think you're kind of ready for this next level, and you're going to experience this next level of development pressure. You will see me and Trevor a lot to help you and the Planning Commission get accustomed to kind of the pace that I think you're going to experience here moving forward. Set this up, but we can talk about however you'd like. Set it up as an hourly contract. So we would basically be billing hourly. I think I put a $42,000 number on there. That was thinking about 6 to 8 hours of my time and Trevor's time between now and the end of the year. But again, we would only bill for the hours that you use. And again, because it's probably a new process for all of you, we work with Sean, city manager, to right size and relate to whatever the amount and pace of applications that come in. Just so you know my background, I actually started here in Licking County, working for the Licking County Planning Commission many years ago, 1994. And then from there, after working for the Planning Commission for 3 years there, worked for the city of Dublin, reviewing plans and developments in Dublin between 1997 and 1990. And then moved on to the firm I work at now, MKSK, where we also did contracts for other cities doing planning review. So I've done that for Bexley, I've done that for the city of New Albany across many years. So used to quickly looking at development plans, working with applicants, trying to represent the city and the community's best interests. And I think one of the things we try very hard to do is raise the bar of development. So it's not just what's in your code and what in the plans, but trying to work to talk about how do you translate development. Often there's going to be an investment in a project, but understanding how to get the applicant to kind of achieve the best result, both for them and for the city, is always important. So that's something we try to do with our projects. What we would do, write a staff, I'm just American Structure Point would do the same thing, but the idea is to review applications, work with you, write a staff report that goes to your planning commission. Usually planning commission is the first group that sees it, but also you would all see this as well. We'd review it, make recommendations on what we think needs to be done, or if we think it's not up to snuff, hopefully it doesn't even make that far. We have enough conversations with the applicant to get them to raise the bar on what they're doing. But anyways, we'll make a recommendation, go to the planning commission as needed, talk to the planning commission, review the planning materials. When applications such as rezonings coming from you, we would do the same kind of thing, staff report, make recommendations to you all. Again, we're representing the city, not the applicant, but trying to get the applicant where they need to be if they're prepared to be there.
Anyone have any questions for him? Thank you. So
Thanks, Chris.
for council, one of the things I wanted us to do with this, with them giving a presentation tonight, I don't want to put anybody in the spot for having to make a decision. So if it's okay with Sean, if anyone has questions from council, if you could submit them to Sean by this Friday, that way he can get it to either group, get the questions back before our next council meeting, so we have the information we need to make a decision, and that way we can read through all these documents and come up with ideas for it, so.
Absolutely.
Does that work for you?
No, Mr. Mayor. I think a lot of the material as far as the applicants and the proposal that was given to you was just given to you tonight. So it would be proper for you all to have some time to consider some of the numbers that are mentioned in some of the proposals. I know American Structure Point, we've had some discussions, and we could probably get a little bit more of a finalized document over to you as well for your review, and then some follow-up questions that may exist with that. and Friday would be a great timing. That way we could have the opportunity for the applicant to answer those. And then at the next council meeting, I believe it's April 4th, after you've had enough time to consider or answer your questions, then you can maybe make a decision. And just to go backwards, this discussion is not new, just to catch some people up that weren't maybe a part of the conversation last year. We lost our planner last year, Bailey Klimchek. She got captured over at Planning Next. They're currently doing the plan for the county framework. And I get to see her on a monthly basis, and she's doing wonderful, just so you all know from a sidebar conversation. But having that gap is something that we need right now from a staffing standpoint, probably considerably more in the next, I want to say next 6 to 7 months, as we start to see things progress a little bit quicker. So not being able to have a 40-hour-a-week person, this is probably the next best thing. As they mentioned in the presentations, we're looking at anywhere between 4 to 8 hours a week, and trying to fill that gap. Right now, we're relying heavily on a kind of a third-party situation until we can find maybe that magical fit of somebody that may be able to take that position full-time. But an advantage that I see with incorporating some of these third parties into the bench strength of the city is you're not just hiring one individual, you're hiring a team. As they both have mentioned, it's not just that individual, it's the rest of the resources that come behind it. So that's something that we probably need right now with all of the things that are going on. So just giving you an explanation as to why we're going this route rather than putting out an application for a planner. I know that back in October, that was the discussion, but at this point, we're looking at it in a different way, and hopefully this is going to be a good decision for us. So if you have any thoughts and you want to navigate differently, let me know, or else we'll keep going on the same course.
Any thoughts from council? Okay,
Great.
thank you, guys. Moving on to action on the minutes for February 7th, 2023. Guys, have a good night. Do we have any changes to the minutes on February 7th? Any discussion? Okay, do I have a motion?
Motion to approve as written.
A second.
Charlie Campbell.
Yes.
Nicole Shook.
Yes.
Al Orsini.
Yes.
John Merriman.
Yes.
Mayor Barnard.
Yes.
Brian Green.
Yes.
Karen Hendrick.
Yes.
Okay. Citizen comments on matters not on the agenda. Do we have anybody tonight? Teresa?
I did not receive any speaker slips. I know this is a new procedure. Was there someone that missed that or need to speak?
Anyone from Ball State?
Did you notice that too?
They're all from Ball State.
Planner's paradise.
I guess.
Okay, awesome. We'll move on to council committee reports. Planning and zoning, the March 14th, 2023 meeting was canceled. Their next one is March 28th, 23 at 6:30 in the council chambers. Design Review Board, their March 14th meeting was also canceled. Their next meeting is April 11th at 5 p.m. Safety and Service, they met tonight. Their next meeting is April 4th, and it is going to be it's a different kind of meeting. We're going to try to split that in finance on the same night. A lot of finance matters come up more regularly, so instead of having it once a month, we're going to have a small meeting at the end of their meeting or at the beginning of their meeting so that we can get that accomplished. Do you have anything tonight, Mr.
That
Mayor?
was probably the largest thing that came from that meeting of importance.
Okay. Finance meeting, the next one is, like we said, it's going to be a short one on April 4th, just to handle anything that's come up in the meantime. But our full meeting will be April 18th at 5 p.m. in the admin office. The events committee met March 23rd at 5, or will meet March 23rd at 5:30 p.m. in the administrative conference room. Park and Rec, their next meeting is the 27th at 1. Economic development, it's to be decided. Do we have a date or anything on that?
Yes, let's get together on that real quick. Teresa, what dates do you have available for that?
Do you have a day in mind?
I'm pretty open. I'd ask my other members of the committee what they have available, and we can go with that.
April, May? what do you think?
I would say, because, so for this meeting, we're gonna need to notice the public, and some stakeholders that we have in our downtown area. So I definitely want to give enough time to do that. I would say today's the 21st. I would say the soonest we could probably do it is, the 3rd. I know we have a Johnstown Chamber meeting that night. I would say that week is the soonest we could do it. Following week is Easter. So whatever you guys have available, I would say the week of the 3rd, the week of the 10th, the week of the 17th.
Are you talking daytime hours, evening?
I would say daytime hours, working hours, just to make it convenient for everybody.
Most of those days are open.
If we're putting invites out, I think it should be an evening meeting, so
Okay.
that the constituents have a right to get here, and businesses also
We can
have
do that. I
to
know
do
that you have a 4 o'clock, or what is it, before 4 o'clock? Is that the conflict, or is it after? 4
Mondays, I
o'clock?
can't do,
Is it- it's
Mondays are
Okay.
3:30 to 5:30.
'Cause I wanted to
is
be
my out.
cognizant, I knew you had a conflict, so.
Yeah,
we'll be
Mondays at 3:30 to
cognizant.
5:30 are out for me. That's the only really one I can't do. So anything else I can
Ask Jesse when
I
his
can make
meeting's
happen.
at 4.
His meeting's at 4.
Have it after, can you do it after? If you're gonna be inviting most of the people that are probably gonna be at the meeting right there that starts at 4, how long is your meeting gonna be, Jesse?
Probably an hour.
Oh, yeah.
So that's
Probably an
I can
hour.
be there,
5,
I
then
can
they
be there, but I can definitely be there at 5:30.
Right.
Yeah.
So you want to do it at 6, that way it gives you plenty of time?
I would say
We'll
let's
do
do it at
5:30.
6, so that gives them time to chat and everything.
So 6 PM on
That'll be the 3rd.
April 3rd.
6 PM.
Good. Good with that, Teresa?
Yes, it's open.
Okay. Rules, is to be decided. And then personal board of review met 3/16/23. There's no one here, Sean, or,
Sean, give you an update.
Yeah, I can give you an update. Sorry, I was capturing the 3rd on my phone, so it's distracted. Yeah, they met, super quick meeting, probably the fastest committee meeting I've ever been to, but it was being ran by Dave Riefenhoff, so he is paid by the hour, so we made sure to get him in and out. And so they basically adopted, not adopted, elected a president or a chairman, vice chair, and then a secretary. It's only a 3-member board. So that was the extent of the meeting. He went through some of the expectations, some of the requirements that they're going to see. Really, the biggest thing they're going to see is we have to go through the civil service agreement, and he's getting them a copy of that for their review, and then upon their recommendation, it'll go to council, and then you all will have the chance and opportunity to look at that particular document. But other than that, there's not a whole lot of meetings that they're going to need to hopefully be a part of. They only arise whenever there's a civil service situation, so it should be hopefully smooth sailing.
who'd they elect as president?
Joe
Okay.
Joe Kraus.
Kraus, Kay, I believe. So
Okay.
Joe Kraus, and don't ask me the other ones because
That's fine.
I can't remember off the top of my head.
They plan to meet again, or?
They do. I will get you the minutes. Dave Riefenhoff actually took the minutes from that. We were allowing Teresa a little bit of time. So he's got those. He's going to forward those over. As soon as we get those, we'll get those minutes over to you. Probably going to be about 6 lines on it. So.
Thank you. Director reports. Chief Smart.
February training, Fire Department, we have some issues with state mandated continued professional training. They're doing the 24 hours again for 2023. With this, there's going to be the ones that are stated as school threat assessment, arrest, search and seizure, legal updates. The 16 are going to be as you wish throughout the program on EOPATA. I don't believe the state will be giving us any money back this year. It's still being discussed. A lot is still up in the air on what the state's going to do. But I'll keep the council updated on that. Project Lifesaver completed 4 hours of training and online tests. In person will be in April, 4 hours to 6 hours. Sergeant Hatfield completed 32 hours of read and advanced read, which is an interview and interrogation training. I completed 8 hours of APELRA, which is a labor relations Social media for February, we reached over 26,000 people, had over 7,000 engagements, 59 new followers, which finally put us over the 6,000 mark. Fuel and miles, everything is basically staying the same as that. Our patrol cars drove a total of 4,700 miles within the city. We idled for 375, engine time 634, and engine off for 971. We now have 2 new officers out in full patrol for the month of February, so our miles per shift went up to 38 now. Our daily average driving was over 2 hours, almost 6 minutes. I would like to let the council know that I don't know if you've noticed, but outside the building, we had an old Village of Johnstown Police Department sign. High winds last month actually ripped it off the building, and a new sign was created. Looks a lot better. And I also provided the statistics. As you can see, the format is being changed. I provided the last 6 months for statistics and January, February of this year, and also our statistics on accidents for each month. And that's all, Madam Chair.
Any questions or comments from the council?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Thank you for the statistics. It's awesome.
I am disappointed in your pictures this month
I
versus
just
last
haven't
month.
any pictures, Mayor, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I'll get you next month.
Thank you. Next is tabled legislation, ordinance 17-2022, an ordinance adopting wage and salary structures for the city of Johnstown. It was tabled way back in September. For council, I am on vacation next week, and I will be working 1 day on this and the budget, get the budget updated for any changes this year. So we should have this on our finance committee at the end of our April 18th. So look for this hopefully to come forward. So public hearings of legislation. Resolution 2023-06, a resolution to initiate an amendment to the zoning ordinance. Mr. Stainer, would you like to explain this one?
I sure can. So, with our particular ordinance, 1137, memory at this point, but yes, 1137, there is a certain procedure that we are supposed to follow whenever we do any type of an amendment to our ordinances. And that statement is in your packet, and it follows, I don't want to read it word for word, but apparently I will, and it's pretty short. States, the amendment to the zoning ordinance may be amended by adoption of a resolution by council. So there's 3 other provisions. One would be the applicant, property owner, or interested party. That's not the case. And then it also can be initiated through the Planning and Zoning Board. But with this particular application and the district that we're doing, as Chris had mentioned at the last council meeting, the importance of it, we just want to make sure we're getting the process absolutely crystal clear correct. A lot of the times, anytime you have any questioning or legal matters, it's not necessarily but it's the process. So this is just a dotting of the i's and crossing of the t's situation. So what this would do, in effect, would allow planning and zoning to review an amendment to, and we specified 1164 Plan Development District to be reviewed by the Planning and Zoning Commission. And then once they have had a chance to review it, they can edit, amend, deny, whatever it is, back to council for your viewing, and then you'll ultimately have the final say and the finalization of the document. So just want to put out there that this is a resolution. It doesn't mean that the next zoning meeting, they're going to start immediately. That document. Probably not.
It's a busy meeting.
It's a busy meeting. And the document is currently, as I shared last week, currently being worked through with MKSK and with our legal staff, Frost Brown Todd. So we're reliant on those back and forths that exist. And part of the process is we'd like to have a pretty good product finalized before we obviously make it ready for public consumption and questioning. So we're working on our end to get that done. Hopefully we'll have it at the next zoning meeting, but that may not happen, so that's okay. If it doesn't, we'll have it at the one following day. I think it'd be the 11th. So kick it around in there. Love to have the input from the commission and then kick it all to you and have you all look at it. So that's it.
Any comments on council?
I appreciate the chance to send this to zoning and take a look at it.
Anyone over here? Okay. Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
No, second.
Do you want to do a public hearing?
I'm sorry.
Please.
So council had no comments. Does anyone from the public have any comments or questions that they'd like to speak about with this? Hearing none.
Charlie Campbell,
Yes.
Nicole Shook,
Yes.
Bob Orsini,
Yes.
John Merriman,
Yes.
Mayor Barnard,
Yes.
Brian Green,
Yes.
Sharon Hendren.
Yes.
Okay, the next is ordinance 05-2023, its introduction. It's ordinance amending ordinance 22-2022, the annual appropriation ordinance of the city of Johnstown to approve necessary changes of appropriation. This is or amendment to basically our budget. It is to increase the water department salaries by $7,000, OPERS and Medicare by $990 and $110. It's to increase wages for 2 water department employees, and this is the net change of that. So, do you have anything you want to add on it?
I'll try to be brief, and this is just the introduction on this. So if you do have any questions, feel free to follow up with staff along the way. But it was brought up in the last Finance Committee meeting. We have one individual with, I don't want to get too far into the details, so I try to be respectful of our staff, but a situation where there may need to be a bump for one individual. And then also another individual as well has a potential employment opportunity elsewhere. And in order to retain that staff member, a wage increase may be necessary. So, like I said, I don't want to go too far into the details, just out of respect for them. But if there is questions, we're obviously pretty open publicly. So I'll be more than welcome to share anything background-wise that I can provide.
Anyone have anything on council tonight for this one? Okay, again, this was just the date or introduction. We'll have a public hearing and vote on it on April 4th, 2023. That is all the items for legislation tonight. The next item is Licking County Health Department appointing. We spoke about it last session. I briefly said something to Ms. Shook about it, if she'd be interested in it. We had talked on council that night how she might be the best qualified since she has dealt with the health department in the past. What else do we want to say about that?
That's basically it. We just need an appointment now that we're a city. We have a seat on that board, so.
You meet, what, twice a year, maybe once a year?
Probably, yeah. Not a heavy commitment, so, but I'll be honest, I don't know the extent of it. I've never been to one. The city's never participated in it, so there's nobody here that's gonna be able to give you background. What I could do is connect you with Chad Brown.
Yeah.
He's the director for Licking County Health Department, and I'm sure he would be more than welcome to, or willing to answer any questions that you may have if there is hesitation on anybody's part. But I don't think the commitment's gonna be all that difficult. But it is an important role. They are doing our health, and that goes with kind of our sewer as well, whenever you're looking at inspections inside of a residential home, so.
Would you be interested in being our appointee?
Sure.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Spot filled.
There you go.
Thank you.
It just needs to be in the minutes, so I think it's just by the mayor, so per county rules and regulations, it's just an appointment by the mayor, so that's why there's no need for anyone else to vote, but the mayor was trying to participate everybody in the discussion, so.
And I don't have any health experience, so I didn't want to be the person.
It's a good call.
Next on the agenda is Design Review Board, a council discussion. We had talked a couple weeks ago about Rules Committee, about during other business, we kind of let the rules fall down a little bit so we can have more open discussion. If the Rules Committee is okay with it, I'd like to do that with this, so that we can have some open dialogue on this. I do want to remind council that we let one person speak at a time on this. We let them get their full thought, and then we can have some audience participation if they'd like on this. But I think, Mr. Merriman, if you brought this up.
Well, Mr. Mayor, if I may?
Yes, go ahead.
The redraft of the Rules Committee is mostly in my head, but for a situation like this, I would write in for your approval at some point that if we are gonna leave the traditional rules of council, we just do it by vote.
Okay. You guys comfortable with voting on that, that we,
And as the mayor mentioned, the other business development was gonna be more of the conversational discussion point, just with courtesy and professionalism, but falling away from the more standard rigid rules that we have been, and I appreciate been implementing to process discourse and conversation.
we want to have more open dialogue in some parts of the council meeting so we can have free-ranging ideas, thoughts, and it's hard to do it when it's a very structured, and that's why we said in other business we would do that. This is not following an open or other business. I don't think we need to make a motion of that, but is council okay with opening this part up?
Sure.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. I think, Mr. Merriman, you wanted to bring this up.
Yeah, so there was a little discord back and forth over meetings in general. This is more of it got labeled design review board. I think it's an overarching conversation about boards in general, roles of boards, which way it trickles up and down. This will probably end up going to the rules committee is my assumption. That's why I think it's good to bring it up, but just talking points here are process of how boards work, which direction the work flows, right? I think these are things that have been lost in the details over the years and need to get kind of ironed out. Maybe it's a rules committee thing, it could be a conversation now. I think that we have, Chris is gonna be working on some of this, some design processes that need to be adapted. Bringing in somebody that's going to do reviewing before, looking at the tools in the toolbox for boards, I think are larger conversations we need to have. Training for boards, I think is a larger conversation that needs to be had. Looking at qualifications for board members when we're putting people on boards is, I think, something with respect to timeframes. I know that we have a lot of boards and sometimes we get in timeframe gaps and people get put on them because we need to fill them. That might not always be the best thing that we can do. So just something that needs to go back to the rules committee. And then I think in addition to that, there needs to be a conversation about members on boards, what they are and aren't allowed to do, who should be communicating for a board. Is it the chairperson? Is it all members of the board? Just things of that notion. I know that there was a discussion that was happening and it got into, I would say, the weeds a little, that needed to be kind of just ironed out on the processes, and I think that's where we were. And it just happened to be over this board.
Well, I don't disagree with you, John. I think that when I talk about rules, I think it's always important to put out front, rules are for process, not people. So if you want to try to control activity, we would have to add layers to the rules that would be such things as censure, removal, which is all possible. The one thing I'll caution against or mention that as I go through the process, the more rules you have, they can cut both ways. Details indicate thought and intent, whereas generalities allow more for a conversation to flow back and forth. Rules can be used to protect and attack. But yeah, all those things are noted, and as we go through this process in committee, conversation, comments, always welcome. The rules are, once again, for the process, not the people that sit in those roles. So yeah, absolutely, if there's something we see happening consistently, or anyone sees happening consistently, they'd like to take a look at the rules. I would recommend everyone go back and read them again. A lot of the things are there. They may be sharpened up, cleaned up, emphasized, but it's about adherence and going back and looking at it. And I don't know the situation you're talking about, but from a process standpoint, excuse me, we should always have direction and process in place so that things can move smoothly and be consistent over time.
So looking at the things he brought up, process of how boards work, qualifications, members on boards and who can communicate, staff, council, how that process works. I think those are all things that we can look at with the rules and decide how those work, if there are already rules there, how they fit into that process.
Well, it can be inferred from the rules of council
Yes.
that the committee chair can write the rules for their committee.
Mhm.
As their lead, it wouldn't be binding into the next committee, But you can set up your own rules within your committees. If you want an umbrella, some structure so that there's consistency, that makes sense too.
The couple items that Rules Committee can't, and it's more for a larger discussion of council then, is the design process and how that works. What is council's thoughts on how the design review board process works? Is it fine the way it is? Is there changes that need to be made? This is
I
y'all's
think the first
discussion.
question is the design review board a subcommittee of zoning? Or is it a committee of their own?
They're a committee of their own.
But should they be? I'm not saying yes or no, I'm just saying should, because they're hand in glove, right? Design
Right.
review and zoning are hand in glove. Should there be some consistency between those two boards? Would that be helpful?
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna have cross-reference. I mean, when you look at design review board, when we wrote that, it references the zoning document. And probably as we move through this, the zoning document may reference them as well. So I think you're gonna have some crossover there.
One of the questions I have, and I don't know if Sean or Teresa can answer it, do committees like this require a council member on them? It seems like every other committee except the Personnel Board of Review has a council member on it. Why does this one not have a council member?
It did in the beginning. Cheryl Robertson was gonna be on it, but when she dropped off,
Per its rules, it doesn't require
Right,
one.
it doesn't
And it doesn't
require
even
one.
require you to live in the city. 2 people can live outside of the city,
Yeah.
per the rules of the board.
Is-
They have to reside in the,
in an adjoining township.
yes.
Because one of the issues I see is that it's, where does design review get their guidance from? If it's coming from council, shouldn't a council member be on it? If it's coming from zoning, shouldn't a zoning member be on it? Where does the guidance come from? So how can we fix that so they have guidance and they're not a committee on their own doing their own thing, and then they come back and say, this is what we came up with?
I think originally how it was designed, they were getting their guidance from the document, and they were getting their guidance from, I mean, Bailey and Jim were at those meetings. So it was where they were gonna get a lot of their guidance from.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else on council want to speak about this, or how to help and alleviate some of the issues?
Why was this committee, why is this the only committee that can have somebody outside the city's jurisdiction on it?
It's the way it's written in the ordinance one.
Is it?
Yeah, that's what council, and I'm not sure, cause John and I kinda walked into this project.
I did speak to
Ben?
former commissioner, or former council member Ben Lee today on this and how it was created. And it was, they were trying to give more guidance to design and review. And they had Jim Leonard and Bailey who were there to give them the guidance. And plus they had a council member, so they had plenty of guidance there on it. But all 3 of those individuals are gone now. And it doesn't have the guidance that many feel it needs.
So, just to slow down a little bit so I can keep course of what kind of the thought process is going. Understandably, the review board, personnel review board doesn't have council on it, right? Conflict of interest. Makes perfect sense. Moving forward, is it reasonable, and this is more of a staff question, to expect them to be a leader, guider, consistent source of information for a committee that doesn't have a board or council member on it? Is that tenable over time? Because you'd mentioned that Jim and Bailey were more involved in the past. Is that, no, we obviously don't have Bailey's role. I'd imagine we're not going to want to pay outside counsel to come and be part of that process, third-party counsel. So that's question 1. Do we want to amend that so that we do have some direction on that board from someone that's been appointed or elected? And 2, whatever it is now, they have a term. If we look to change things in the future, does that? What I don't want to do is, I don't know the answer, which is good. I don't want to single someone out by changing the rules and saying, well, because you don't live here and we decided that's the new rule, you're out. You know, not that that's a determining factor, but it's good to know as far as part of the process. So I would recommend that we look at what we want it to be and move in that direction. versus doing a wholesale quick change, because then we go from what we have to starting over.
Yeah, I would be good. I would be happy with making the changes that we have a council member assigned to it, so they can relay the functions of council, what the council's looking for to that board, and also, I don't understand why we have it open outside the
I
city.
don't disagree.
Teresa?
I was gonna say, if you wanna look into the review and approval authority and how the board was established and the rules, it's 118705.
I'm not that concerned about how we got here, unless there's something we can glean from the intent.
I think the intent, I think the intent was they wanted to be able to cast a wider net, to be able to get, you know, if there were certain architects that lived outside the city, and try to get more people like that in. I know at one point we had that HGTV Designer of the Year that lived somewhere close, and I heard that name kicked around, but like I said, we kind of walked into that one. There was things planned, but
The purpose is listed in 118702.
What does it say?
The purpose of the design review districts, to promote well, that goes to the whole document. And then, of course, the design review board enforces the document, so.
Okay.
To promote general health, safety, and welfare of Johnstown by maintaining and increasing real estate values, generating, I don't know.
Okay.
It's long.
It-
It says, well, that whole chapter 1187 might be helpful if you want to give yourself some background.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I just want to bring up one point from a legal perspective, and this is Yaz's words, not mine, so I will reciprocate those. Sometimes not having counsel on a board is helpful because of the autonomy. And that was a situation that I think we had a conversation, trying to remember, it was, Teresa was part of that, so help me, Teresa, if I'm going wrong. But it was just recently where it was actually when all three of the entities tried to meet together. And Yaz was like, this is something that's different. I haven't seen this happen before. So he said typically there's not a lot of involvement from council with the boards to create the autonomy. So I hear what you're saying, and that is you want to have representation from council to give them guidance. However, the discussion that Yaz and myself had was guidance should already be there in the defined ordinances. The guidance should be a part of a document that exists, and it shouldn't be a situation where there's such wide-ranging ability of a board just to ambiguously choose this or that. The guiding principles and the documents should lead them to the general conclusion, because that is council's will. So council governs these boards through the ordinances that it sets in place. So then you give the autonomy to the board to see if they fall within the parameters, and then in the appeal process, it can then go through zoning or then back to council. So I'm not trying to throw cold water on the idea of putting a council member on there, but from a board perspective, that's typically how they work to create some of that autonomy, especially from an appeals process. Then you have that same person that's now in the appeal seat, appealing on it again and ruling on it again. So the direction and the guidance, I'll go back to that, should be in your codified ordinances or in the documentation that they are supposed to be enforcing. That is where you interject, and if they're not enforcing that, or they don't have good guidance and good documents, then you need to amend your zoning code or your codified ordinances so that they can act upon whatever you wish and desire. So if I'm going anywhere wrong there, Chris,
no,
let me know.
I agree with that. So when this started, and John can tell you this too, when this started, we were doing the design review on zoning at the same time that we were doing our new zoning code. And like I said, they referenced each other, and you can still see in design review, with trees, this is where it came up before, when we were talking about Chase Bank. I made a comment about the trees, and I said, if you look in our old zoning, here's where that references that. That's still in design review. But since, for whatever reason, we voted down the new zoning on the zoning board, that document does not exist now to back up our design review document. So that's what we talked about in our joint meeting, it causes some issues at certain points because you have design review referencing a document that doesn't exist. So now they revert back to our zoning code as it exists today. And that's why I said amending things, fantastic. I mean, one thing that I've heard come up through this process is that we have people on a board that may not be qualified. And the thing is, everybody who joins a board, they get their legitimacy either through being elected or being appointed. And that's where the legitimacy comes from. And like Sean said, if the code is there and it is written correctly and it is clearly defined, that's what they're applying. They're qualified to take that code and apply it to the situation that they're in.
But if they have a
Now-
document that doesn't work, then no one's qualified.
Well, that's where we are, is we're trying to amend these things and we're trying to work through this process.
Right, so that would be the point of this board, where you have a board that exists, that has a toolbox, that's trying to work on a project, and they open it up, and half the tools aren't there. So it kind of goes back to some of our housekeeping issues that we have as a whole that we've been working on as council, where we have great ideas with the lack of processes. And that's kind of one of the points of boards in general, to look at the boards in general, is if you have a board and you task them with something, but you don't fairly give them what they need to do it, you can't say that they're qualified or not qualified, but you can look and say, well, it's not really fair to be on that board because you don't have what you need.
Well,
You
so
know-
the root cause isn't the rules. The root cause is the tools.
Correct.
And my understanding is that actively, it has been for some time, engaging the zoning situation and addressing it through MKSK and others.
Mhm.
So before I'm gonna be motivated or excited about doing a rules change, let's see if that, before we layer this thing up, let's see if that helps alleviate whatever the negative is that some or all, I'm not sure who's saying.
Well, the point there would be, let's say you have American Structure Point or MKSK looks at it. They're both sitting here staring at us, so we use both. They review a document and they give us feedback. What they're reviewing the document with is the same tools that the design review board is supposed to be using. If those tools if they don't have the tools in that box to do it, they could be the greatest reviewers in the entire world, but they're limited to what that says. So our largest problem that we have here is we have a document that was reviewed through planning and zoning that may have some flaws in it, that probably were a little one-sided from maybe some of the people that aren't here that were supposed to be here to help guide. And now we have a weak spot in our armor because our toolbox is left empty.
And we're addressing that as quickly as possible, is my understanding.
Right, so, but one of the problems we're gonna keep running into is,
Oh, okay, hold on, the overarching thing is why would we have a sitting committee that doesn't have the tools to do their job
Right.
anyhow?
Yeah.
you wouldn't say, we don't have any financial data, but let's have a
I would,
what is our finance committee gonna do?
that's gonna be at their discretion, really. I mean,
Can-
it's
can we-
volunteer.
Can we keep the design review board intact, but put a moratorium that until we get the right tools, that we're not gonna meet, so that we can get the toolbox put together, then they have the tools they need to put the project
The
together?
trouble you're gonna have is right now, you're gonna have projects come in. You're gonna have applications come in. If you put a building moratorium on it, that is a bad look.
No, not a building moratorium, but,
Just make it go to zoning is step one.
yeah, until, and I don't know what the
We're
right
gonna
answer
use the
is.
same rules though. We're gonna use the same framework to,
You're not gonna use the
Apply
design,
it.
you're not gonna use the design document.
you want us to just use our standard zoning, which is also an antiquated thing that is full
That's the
of-
issues we're running
that
into, is we've gotta get our documents.
Right, either
think-
way,
I
you're
think we
going
also
to end
need
up
to-
with something
I
that,
think we also need to look and see, if you look at about every other municipality that does do any type of design review, it's in a extremely limited scope of their area. Westerville, only in the uptown area. Granville, only in the downtown region. New Albany, only in the Market Street area.
but you see every city has a design review.
They don't
or
have a design review
architectural
board.
review. They have an architectural
That
review
goes through
board.
planning and zoning. No boards, Westerville doesn't have one, New Albany doesn't have one, City of Powell doesn't have one, City of Granville doesn't have one. It all runs through their planning and zoning. They only reference designs for, say, if we did a historical district in downtown. Everything else comes straight from their code.
So Sean, what is your thought on a time frame to get our toolbox fixed? Put a lock on it and get it fixed.
So glad Chris is here. Because I'm going to defer to him. We've had this conversation literally last week. I'll say it again because I've said it already. The current document that we have, in my opinion, is not a really great document. It's not a workable document that really gives architectural specifications to guide that board whenever they're talking about architecture, and that's not fair to that board. So it's not a slight for anybody that's on that board. I mean, they're doing the best they can, but there's limited, very limited tools that guide them from an architectural standpoint. So I pressed Chris last week. It is a part of our scope of work that's being done in our comprehensive plan. And I said, how quickly can I get something worked up? Now, you don't want to go too fast because you want a quality document, obviously. So we want to make sure we get this process right. So I'll defer to Chris. As I pressed on him last week, he said, and go ahead.
Before he answers, thought process is, like I was saying about people have certain areas. This could be a situation where potentially, if we all could come to an agreement on this, where we repeal back our design area, because right now it's like almost every district that we have.
Right.
And we pull it back and say, they're gonna get whatever area we look for first, and then we can go back to start with this one. And we just look at all design reviews in this one, and then we can say, okay, now let's work on, it could be GCC 1 first. GCC 1's the hardest one because you have downtown and
Yeah, it's a complicated.
it's a very complicated district. It might
But I'd
get
like
broken
to
into two, correct?
Change it a lot.
Correct.
You want an overlay, obviously.
Correct, an overlay district. But
When you're historic area.
instead of saying, hey, let's look at every district that we have with a document that doesn't have a lot of stuff to say, we're looking for this, and this in this area. And then in this area, we're looking for this, and this. Because we all know that you're not going to look for the same thing in all the areas. It's not made to look like that. That's why it has districts in it. But maybe we should need to reel it back, simplify it, and then go back forward. Because like I said, I don't think you can go, yeah.
Put you on the spot, and I
Well,
apologize.
it's fine. I'm happy to answer questions, and it's an important topic. I will say another example, just because I'm very familiar with it, because I served on it at one point in time. Worthington actually has the planning commission, and then they have 2 additional members that are part of the architectural review board. So they have one meeting, planning commission meets on the night, they go through the planning commission agenda, and then they close the planning commission, and they open the architecture review, and the 2 additional people that usually just stay up on the board and listen to the planning commission discussion, then they're part of the architectural review commission, then they do the architectural review board business. Most communities do design review including under a certificate of appropriateness. So in order to, the zoning has to meet the zoning requirements, and if you do variance, you gotta go through the Board of Zoning Appeals. But the way the cities capture the ability to look at architecture and design is through a certificate of appropriateness. So if someone comes in and they're proposing a subdivision development plan, it goes through planning commission approval, but when they actually come with a project with architecture and development to it, then the architecture review board gets to look at it from a design point of view to provide the certificate of appropriateness to say it meets the requirements of the city. To your point, though, the toolbox is the issue here. One of the things I talked to Sean about is maybe the design review board could be tasked with finding, and we could give them a number of them to start with, but going through other communities, similar communities, guidelines, standards, and pull out, circle, highlight the ones they think are most applicable to Johnstown. I think this would be a faster way to triage this, and then we could assemble a version for Johnstown based on the pieces, parts of other communities that are like it. At some point, you want to go back and dive deep, and we'll be doing part of that as a comprehensive plan, what's truly authentically Johnstown. But there are enough other design guidelines just around Central Ohio from communities that have architecture built in the same time periods and are wrestling with some of the same things you are all are. How do you appropriate infill that have good standards and documents that are public documents that we can talk about what you like the best and pull from.
I did that homework, and I sent the design review board 4 different links. One of them was Powell, one of them was New Albany, and 2 from Westerville. So
Yeah.
if you have others, I would love to get those over that you would recommend that may be applicable to Johnstown. But I've started on that. I took your recommendation.
Plain City.
Yeah, and you're having a good discussion here too, because there's kind of a difference between, if Johnstown's looking at everything, I would say there's some fine grains in between there. Some communities really do just talk about the historic districts. Dublin has historic district design guidelines, that's worth looking at. Worthington has just historic district design guidelines. Bexley has Main Street guidelines, which are interesting. So you can kind of pull different pieces depending on what areas. But yeah, if you're looking at, if everything in Johnstown goes through design review, you're probably going to have some difference depending on either what zoning district is or where it's physically located within.
Yeah, and if you look at ours, it isn't traditionally anything new that would get annexed that goes through it. It isn't housing developments. We're not looking at those, which some other ones do. I know they're looking, if you try to build a pole barn at your house, they're gonna look at that. If you tried to build onto your house, they're gonna look at that. So I know that, and that was probably one thing that I wanted to bring up this year is how do we advance that? How do we increase their role? Because I think we have a qualified group of people over there that wants to work. I think they made it very clear that they want to work, they want to be involved, they want to do things. And in a time where it's hard to find volunteers, I'd rather not let volunteers go.
Yeah.
If they can be useful to us in helping come up with some of these designs, I think that would be great. And I think that we have a role that we can use them for going forward. We just maybe need to define it a little bit better and update it a little bit better.
Yeah, I think that,
And I think they're fine with that too. We had that meeting.
yeah.
So-
And they haven't, unfortunately, they haven't been able to have another meeting since then.
I think that from our discussion where we looked at 2 people to kind of do a planning role, I think that part of that is should include whenever something comes, somebody that is a design professional is going to look at it, make edits and notations, give it to them just as this is what we see on a first glance. Now you can pick it apart. You have some verbiage that you might not be accustomed to saying because it's not your normal job, or words or other things. So when you have people that are looking at it, you're giving them, again, every opportunity to know, if you're a banker, you might not understand half the things that you're talking about. You might really want to do it and be really good at it in 6 months, but it'll take, again, we need some training of some sort. There's a whole lot of things that need to happen. I think that's fair this isn't just a discussion. This happens to be heavily on this one, but with all boards that people sit on, just to kind of make them, this entire area is getting ready to change, and we're gonna have a lot of extremely professional people trying to come in, and a lot of businesses and developers that are gonna wanna come in, and people moving into the town, and we need to elevate with them and try to make sure that we're staying just on par with everybody. I mean, the citizens are gonna expect something for the city.
Well, in the past, we had a city planner that would write the
Right.
recommendation for them to go through.
Well, and right now,
And
that's
that
what I
was-
mean. We don't
yeah, it
have
was
one,
nice
so-
when we had that. Luckily, in this case, I mean, this may be one of the more qualified boards that we have because we have an engineer that's running it.
He's not a PE though.
Well, yeah, but still, he's qualified. We have a designer at an architecture firm on there. We have, a guy who knows fire code very well.
Yeah, we have no design professionals that are looking at exteriors of buildings, but we do have people that are definitely willing and able.
So let me ask council this. Would it be a good recommendation then that for now, any design review items, any design things stay in zoning, allow the design review team to continue to meet, but to meet and work on creating this new document based on the other cities, what they're seeing, making that recommendation to council, like, this is what we've come up with, this is what we like.
I think you have to repeal the resolution first to take all of the people that are coming in off the hook for it.
You would run into a code or,
Correct.
a codified ordinance issue doing that because you have the design review board per your ordinance. The COA has to go before that particular board. So
In
there's no way-
any of the districts that they're required to.
Correct.
If
In
we
any of the
repeal it
districts. So
and we make some
you wouldn't be able to
edits.
have a sitting board and then bypass that board to go to zoning. You would have to do it in a different way.
So I keep hearing that we need a new document, the toolbox is broke, we know where we can find new tools at to replace them. We need to put those tools in there and get a new toolbox. How do we do this?
So I'll pull back from, and I just want to make it specific because I've also said this in the past. It's not that we're going to create this, we're going to have qualified professionals create this document, and then this board that exists, if it's an advisory group or if it's a board, I don't know what you want to call it, would help the conversation after this draft is being presented, and they do their homework, and then they look at, 4 or 5 different communities. If it's the design review board, obviously that would make more sense. They would review it, put their flavor on it. Kind of the same thing that's going to happen with this 1164 district, this planned development district. The document's going to be done by professionals. They're going to help guide the conversations. They're going to be there to answer questions. Why we do it this way, why we don't do it that way. So I just want to make sure that that's clear. It's not, we're going to take 5 or 6 different entities and then we're going to sit down one night and have a
Hodgepodge.
Oh my God, that scares me.
It'd be pretty, though.
It would be terrible. The other thing I want to point out
Different types of
is-
houses all over.
Yeah. Typically, Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of these cities have an architect on staff. Or at least an outside.
Or they have a consultant.
Consultant. So for the architectural process, there's a consultant that exists. I would recommend that, being the newness that we have, especially setting that standard until that kind of gets established, that we have an architect guide, whether it be this board, the zoning board, or whomever.
Architect, master plans examiner.
Absolutely. Before that document,
Plans examiner.
plan ever gets to that board, it would behoove us to have an architect review that to make sure that it at least meets the qualifications. That way, you're not wasting the board's time, and I think you're gonna get a better quality product. You're gonna have, we talk about professionals in their field, you're gonna have a professional in their field examining exactly what it is that it's supposed to be and what it's not supposed to be. And then you're getting a product to the board that's much easier for them to look at, and you're putting on the window dressings rather than the entire foundation of the design project. So
We did that last time, though, before it went to zoning. We had the same group that I think did Westerville's plan go through that
for the
design review and for our zoning.
We had
that we
an
changed.
architect?
So we had Kim Littleton.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's who went through it last time. And you're not happy with that document?
Went through the design document or the zoning document?
Both.
I'm not trying to put her down, but. Him, sorry. See, I don't know who it is, so completely unbiased. If you look at the design review document that we have and you look at other municipalities, you will see a clear dividing difference as to what is theirs and what is ours. And like I said, I'm not trying to throw anybody under the bus, but I don't feel that it hit the mark. And that's where I'll leave it.
I think that we're also, to caveat the statement, we're in a little bit of a different place.
Yeah.
And I think that this is just, the design review board is a great board to have. I just think that we shot real high, we didn't get all the way there, and now we just gotta try again. It's a great board. I think we have people on it that can definitely look at what somebody else is gonna say. They can help redesign it. I just think it's something that it might be worth pulling back, letting us rework it, and then putting it back.
Okay, so we put it out the first time, though. You didn't have any of these thoughts on it.
Well, right, we're also 2 years removed from that conversation almost.
So what do you guys recommend then?
My thought is, and this is way zooming out, we need to stack rank our priorities. We need to focus on one, and we need to pound the nail in. We've been pounding nails in from my last run on the board. we're still pounding some of those nails back down. I think because we get them most of the way and then we move on. We don't gotta pound them all down, let's just pick the most important ones, get those procedures, processes in place so we can build off of them. We're having conversations about foundational things, and then we're talking about the next step, and then we're going back and talking about the foundational items again. We've gotta get the foundation right. And whatever that is, through our discussion, staff's leadership, professional outside resource, we need to stack rank. 1, 2, 3, this is what needs to happen. And we need to focus on 1 until it's done. Then we'll look at 2. We need to restack around the way, fine. But to keep bouncing around, we've got lots of great starts. We've got very few finishes. That's in a whole, but what I'm saying.
So we've had discussion tonight. We see the issues we have, the things we need to fix. What is council's next step?
Is zoning our priority?
It has to be.
It is.
It has to be. Zoning has to be a priority.
I think it's by far the number one thing we need to work on. It controls, outside of water, everything.
Outside of water and infrastructure, it's a major thing that we need to work on.
And again, like I said, I think that if we have a document, in principle and practice is a great idea. I think we've missed the mark a little, and now to have people come in and have people come in and try to meet it.
Details.
Right, I mean,
If that's our priority, and as a board, as a council, we can agree to that. I'm gonna ask Sean, what percentage of our assets and time is being spent to drive that? What do you need from us? What do we need from others? What tools do you need to push that one as quickly ahead as possible? Now, you can't do it in a vacuum. Everything else needs to continue at the same time, but
So really, everything's already in place to have this document drafted. I mean, we're working towards that. The one thing that we need is time. And Chris is gonna piggyback on that. I mean, this comprehensive plan came to us. I made it very clear that I wanted a design, architectural piece integrated with that, which is what pushed the cost higher. So that was inside the scope of the project. It's time. So the money's already allocated. The firm's already decided. They've already been chosen. We actually have $25,000 sitting in the budget for the architectural review person, if need be, whenever this document comes online. It's just, I can't make a souffle any faster than it's gonna cook in the oven. So, I mean, you wanna eat it raw, you can go ahead, but
So do we
I wouldn't
just,
recommend it.
do we just hold on to design review board right now and not put anything to them until we get this?
That's the bad part, because you can't, unless you do a moratorium, you can't stop somebody from submitting an application. It's part of our process. It's a requirement that exists. So if somebody wants to come in, build a building,
within one of those districts.
within one of those districts, they have to go through the process according to our current zoning ordinance. So you could do a couple different options, I guess, and I'm thinking on the fly here. One would be you would have to change your zoning document, or I'm sorry, your codified ordinance to no longer have that requirement. And then there's no zoning board to review. Well, there'd be a zoning board, but then there would be nothing to review because you don't have a district for them to be a part of. I don't know that I love that idea. Like I said, jump in, Chris, anytime, because you've been through this way more than I have.
Well, would it be better to take this to Yaz, say, what are our options here?
I think he's gonna tell you kind of what you're already hearing. You need more time, unless you want to do a moratorium.
We don't want to do moratorium.
Moratorium is a bad word. I don't even want to say it.
Here's a question.
So let's not say
Here's a
moratorium.
question. Here's a question, because I know that there is a desire from people in the community to have a downtown district. I would say that some people heard about this. How quickly do you think that we could get a document just for a review of the downtown district, which allows us to change our ordinance to keep our board for that area? We have a document for that area. They can look at anything that comes in that area. And then in the meantime, that board can meet, or planning and zoning can meet, and start to rework the document. because then it gives them something that they can do. They still exist. They're a good board to have.
Yeah, I want to keep that board, and I
Correct.
want to give them.
I'm just trying to-
Clearly, they're wanting to work.
I'm just trying to
So
think of a
they're-
way that makes it work so that everybody wins all the time here. And we get a great document. We have the time and the allocation of resources. We have a board that's willing to do it.
Chris, question I would have for you is I don't want to leave the rest of the city vulnerable. You mentioned some cities have a specific area that heavily emphasizes the architecture, but obviously in Worthington, for instance, they have a specific area that has to go through that process, but the level and quality of development over there, or New Albany, or in Powell, is probably elevated from what we are at. Do we have, or would you recommend some documentation that would allow us to have these conversations, maybe in-house with the developer or a site development that would come online and we say, hey, look, these are the requirements that exist. This is the ordinance that we can point to defend ourselves. And would it be an architect? I'm just throwing stuff out there. How does it work in other? New Albany has a large expansive that kind of overarches everything.
I was gonna say,
So,
can we go to not a PUD, what are we calling it now?
plan development, so.
Can we go to a plan development encompassing everywhere except for an extremely small area and then work backwards?
You're touching on the main reason we're
Correct,
recommending the
correct.
plan development
Right.
district. Which is basically, but this is gonna be new development,
Right.
because then we're writing the standards with the applicant into the document, so you have them. And maybe even we can borrow some of those as we rebuild the one for Johnstown. My personal opinion, and take it or leave it, I think because of the way your code's written, you need to have a design review board, unless you change what the code says, the ordinance to say. You need to have the design review board because you need to issue a certificate of appropriateness. And so that's in your code. I think you need to have the board. I think you want the ability to issue a certificate of appropriateness and review things. A first step might be to have some kind of training or discussion. I do think looking at other regional models will hopefully inspire them and think about it. And I think because of the way it's written, which is trying to protect, basically all the integrity of Johnstown and the character of Johnstown, which was already written in your code, they can use kind of that knowledge to review things and say, we think this fits the character or doesn't fit the character. It's not as great a system as once you get more, documentation and the tools in the toolbox. But I think it's enough to say, they have the ability to say no to an applicant, this doesn't fit the character of Johnstown. I do think it might be worth you all and the planning commission to sit down at some point and have a retreat and talk about the key issues or things you want to make sure that are critically important to see as a stopgap, so that you're all kind of all on the same page. And I do agree, the boards and commissions understand that they're appointed by you and they serve at your pleasure, but.
Just want to make sure we have teeth. We've got some GCC2 districts that have some lands that are available that could be developed, specifically near the Raccoon Creek corridor. I just want to make sure we have teeth in our documents that allow for that to be architecturally reviewed. And I don't know if Chris is going to be able to look through that to make sure that we are covered there, to where if said developer comes in and says, well, I meet your setbacks, I meet your height requirements, I meet your green space, I'm going to build a big box with concrete block and I'm going to paint it, and I'm going to have a flat roof, and you can't make me do anything other, I would be concerned. And that's where I'm going to lean on Chris and say, how can you make that not happen? What would you recommend that we put in place? Because right now the COA is kind of that stopgap. But if we remove that COA process from that district, which I get what John's saying, having it in a historic district probably makes more sense, but I also want to have things in place that say there's an overarching requirement, and then we have an architect review, which you're submitting, and this doesn't meet. So,
And our communities like Columbus, and I feel bad you went with the American Church Point people to come out, it's up to you, but also share their experience, but.
There he left.
Oh, they left?
Yeah.
Oh, never mind, all right. Well, so, still, I appreciate they're here, and they're also interested in doing this, and, but, for example, in Columbus, the one was from Columbus, Columbus has an urban corridor overlay. Because really, when you think about it, some of the most important parts of a community that people see are the corridors. So in Columbus, one of the things they've done is in special corridors, they put a urban commercial overlay. That text is actually very good, and could be something you could look at as well, have the Planning Commission Design Review Board look at. That is designed for infill development to match the more historic character, original character of Columbus's communities, not the post-war suburban kind of auto things, but to try to make it fit better with the original character. So in this case, City of Columbus went through an effort to say these certain corridors are special corridors, we are maintain them. So in these areas, we have an overlay zoning district with these additional standards, which you're kind of doing with your design review board. You're just applying it everywhere. But this gets back to probably what you want to do, in your historic center is a little different than what you might want to do along some of the corridors.
I'm just getting TVs in case y'all want to reference stuff, so keep going, sorry.
I think because you have the certificate of appropriateness in your code now, don't give that up. I think that's an important tool. I just think, I'm not legal counsel, but asking your legal counsel, I think they'd say that you need to have something to make those decisions based on, but at this point, I think you can use the general language that's in your code that sets up the design review board as a basis for decisions until we can provide some more tools.
So what you're suggesting is keep them there, have them work on training, understanding what are different elements, different areas, things that we might want to apply here, so that when something comes forward, they can apply those standards to what's coming until we get something written.
Yeah, I would agree with that. That's why I think, so Sean, the assignment I would give them is, here's a handful of good examples, and you go look for some others, and then find the things that you think are most applicable to Johnstown. And then I would even have them come present to you all and say, we went through, here's our favorite things. These are things we like. And you can react to it and say, yeah, that's good, like that, here's some problems with that. And then that saves you from paying us for that time. But once we have that kind of input, that helps us more quickly, I think, put something together that you could all use.
That was something after the last meeting we had with them. That's kind of where Bob and I left them too. Is if you have ideas and you have, recommendations, bring them to council. Unfortunately, they just haven't been able to meet since then.
It's gonna take a while. I mean, this is one municipalities and this is Powell's. So I'm not trying to hide anybody's or support anybody's or not, but this is one of the ones I gave them, and you can see how many pages that sucker is. But there's a wealth of information. This is just one that I sent them, so that's an 80-page document. Then there's obviously a lot of pictures, but there's obviously a lot of text that it points to. The American Field Guide from Architecture, that's gonna be something that you're gonna wanna reference in your document. Everything points to that. So this is gonna be a quasi-small course. They're gonna have to really dedicate some time if they wanna be a part of this. And I would recommend council has the final say on this. Everything that I kick over to them, I will kick over to you all. If you're weird like me and you love stuff like this, when I went through the comprehensive plan, I took it on a camp out, and I had a blast sitting around the fire reading this weird document, but that's me. And this stuff fascinates me. I mean, you can see some of the architectural features that exist that I'm just like, I get excited about. Wow, that could be cool, to have some of that preservation and some of those streetscapes and stuff like that. So I'm getting excited to talk about it, so I'll just shut up. But yeah.
So most of these are divided up into what you do with existing structures and how they could be rehabbed or added on to appropriately. That's usually a section. So that when someone owns a historic house or a house of significance or a building of significance, that it gives you guidelines on how to evaluate appropriate additions or renovations. And then there's usually a section on, in certain districts, how you would build new to fit and still be contextual with what exists, but using, it's again up to the community, using some new materials and some other things, but still the scale, the massing, the setbacks fit with the scale of where it's at. And then there's other places where you say, no, we're okay with, development, we need to have parking and it's gonna be large, but these are the locations where this is appropriate and And then you can talk about other things that are important, about how to break up massing so things don't look gigantic, make sure things have windows and doors, make sure the site's laid out in a way that is attractive, and doesn't look barren, those kind of things.
How many pages down? It's taking a lot of load.
Yeah, like I said, these are all beefy. New Albany actually has a different, they have one overarching kind of first document, that's their guidelines and principles, and then they have specific zones. I was trying to bring up one to reference what Chris was talking about as far as the new areas that exist. And one of those that I think is going to be important for Johnstown to have come online is their industrial district. We call it industrial, but they don't call it that. I'll try to pinpoint it and find it. If I can't, there it is. So they've got reference points for some of the development that I think is going to be coming in pretty quickly from an Intel secondary supplier market standpoint. So, I mean, they've got some guiding principles here that really help the board do the right job. And we don't have to, Johnstown doesn't want to be New Albany, but I think there's things that you can take from it from an architectural standpoint. I love the farm character one, I'll throw that out there. I think that speaks to our rural characteristic. So there's different things that you can implement into it. And you can decide whether you want this to kind of be overarching in a very broad way. And then you could also say, no, we just want to be very specific in certain areas, or you could do a hybrid of we're going to be broad and we're going to be specific as well. So think about those things, but this is another, decent sized document. This one's got more pictures to it. So 16 page. So not entirely that bad, but you've got all these other districts that go in: village center residential, village center commercial, existing buildings, residential outside village, commercial outside village. So these are things that are going to make the difference between what we look like when we're all grown up. I mean, if we don't get these right now, then we're probably not going to be happy with the product that exists in about 40 to 50 years from now.
These are extremely important. This is why I think that zoning and having a board like this is extremely important, for the exact reason of 62 coming into town, where you have a literal hodgepodge of architectural. It doesn't all need to look exactly the same, but it should have some sort of definitive.
No offense to some of our other Licking County brethren, but do we want 62 to look like 79 and Heath, or do we want it to look like something better than that?
Correct.
No, I mean, we identified already with that corridor district, what we want it
Is
to look
important.
like, and it
It's
looks
extremely
way more, it looks way more like, Cleveland Avenue
Yeah,
up near Westerville.
Cleveland Avenue.
We have green space out front, we have businesses that are kind of closer, and then we have parking in the back. So we've identified what we want that neighborhood to look like. John and I spent a lot of time on that.
Okay, so is council good with what we want to see design review board to at least start on for now as we get this documents written?
Yeah, we should put a tangible on it.
Right?
What'd you say?
So our,
A tangible number on there, like, hey, in the next month.
I'll put some guardrails on it, some framing for time.
Exactly. Oh, yeah, 6 months from now, we'll talk about this again.
Gotta have a
But, you know,
deadline.
Maybe at the end of April, we should, or the first meeting in, or.
And if I hear
May.
this is where you want me to go, that's fine. This is the direction I need, because I'll need to know, obviously, I'm gonna read through every single document that I'm giving to them, so that I can be informed as well. So, cool thing is I enjoy this, but it's gonna pull me off of some other stuff. But from what I
We're
just
gonna get to
heard
that in
from
a
you
minute, so.
all, which was great direction, it's, other stuff needs to lay low. So I'll go back to, don't get mad if I'm.
We're gonna
not
get to that in a
president of
minute.
the
We're gonna get to that in a
community.
minute, so.
Okay,
Okay,
all right.
Thank you, Chris.
okay. So
Sweet.
we've got some guardrails there. We're gonna move to other business, and it's gonna tie into that conversation.
Perfect segue.
One of the things I know council has done in the past is they've done goal-setting sessions, taken Saturdays, worked on that, tried to come up with goals for council, things they want to work on for that year. We've all kind of been put together hodgepodge over the last year, council members, except for Ryan and Sharon. And even Ryan's fairly new with council. And with Sean in his role, new to his role, I think we need to prioritize what his priorities are going forward for right now. we've got annexation agreements, we've got zoning, we've got water and sewer, we've got many, many different projects. There's only so many hours a week that he could physically work. So what does council want to say to Sean to say, this is what your priority is, this is what we want you to work on, get the nails nailed in, then go to the next project?
I think most of them revolve around the same conversation, which would be annexation's going to directly correlate with zoning, plans, all of our documentation we need there. I also think it's one of our weakest standpoints from a city. We have no staff that's dedicated to it. We're going to be looking to get outside source, but we don't have anybody that's dedicated to it. I think it'll be the thing that we get the most questions on. I think that water is getting taken care of at some level over here by Jack, who happens to be our resident water expert.
We're getting numbers close to it.
And I think, and again, I think that that's something that we know we're gonna have to lean, infrastructure and water is gonna go hand in hand with this. Something we're gonna have to lean on Jack for. They're gonna have to get in the same sandbox with all of that over conversation, but.
And we have been.
Oh, 100%.
Many meetings.
But I think that the number one thing we're gonna have to work on is the future for Johnstown lies in what land gets annexed in, what goes there, what it looks like, how it affects our community.
How we service it.
How we service it, then it also goes right in the conversation.
Okay, so I don't want this to be directed just by one person or two person to Sean. I want to start down with Charlie and ask Charlie, what are the top priorities you see that Sean should be working on right now? And I'll give you some time if Nicole has an idea already. One of you go.
I think John said quite a bit, but I have to agree that Sean's focus really should be on making sure that our zoning and our design review, since we talk so much about it, is where we want it to be. Your infrastructure, we know we have to put that in place. That's the given. But if we don't want just anybody to come in town and just build whatever they want, then we have to nail down what we want on zoning and design review. But they can't be in conflict, all right? And that's where they are. Right now, zoning and design are in conflict. Because you can come in here, and I was on zoning, and I can give you a zoning permit. You can turn around and go to design, and they'll say, we're not going to do that, you're going to do it, you're going to put it this way or that way. That, to me, tells a builder, these guys are not with it. Okay, they don't know what's going on here, all right? And so consequently, they just do what they want. I mean, we're faced with a curb situation right now. Somehow, doesn't matter who missed it, we missed it. Okay, and so now we're going to pay for it in our own way. So these are the kind of things that we haven't nailed down, and we need to. I mean, we need to, and I know priorities are there, but our priority has to be, if we want our town to go like we want to go, get our zoning, get our design review in place. Jack does an excellent job of the water sewer. He's got to be a good right-hand person to Sean. Sean can dump that onto him, and it's getting done. That's what we want to see happen with zoning, and that's what we want to see happen with design review. Sean's the over guy, but he should be able to dump it down, and he knows it's going to be taken care of. That's my priority, would be those two specific things, zoning and design review.
Okay. Thank you. Nicole?
Well, Sean, I would just like to say that you are quite the juggler, considering what you do in a day, a week, 2 weeks, a month, the things that you get pulled away from. I do believe that zoning is the number one priority that we have to get solidified to the best that we can. I know it's a living document in itself. I know it changes from time to time. I think we've all seen that. I think that's been one of the biggest issues, is you think you got something nailed down and you're like, I got it, we got it. And then another jurisdiction does something, you're like, oh, guess this isn't good anymore, you know? And we've seen that time and time again, not only here, but in other jurisdictions as well. So, you know, we gotta find a way to get it to it where it's a solid foundation. And to get there, I don't have an answer for that. I mean, we rely on experts like you to get that zoning solid for us is being able to rely on the experts. And I think that we have to quit being afraid to rely on the experts here. We don't know. None of us are qualified in zoning. Sorry, none of us. We go to people who are qualified in their zonings and letting them do it and help us through it. And then we decide how we want it to look. We decide what Johnstown is going to be. And the constituents that we serve help us get there as well. And that's where the comprehensive plans comes in. So, for those of you watching and for those of you out there, we need that input first and foremost. And we need it every day, all day, in an appropriate manner so that we can take it and make Johnstown grow responsibly and be good at what we, who we are. We don't lose who we are. So I think that zoning is definitely something that needs to be a top priority to get that foundation going, because I feel like nothing else can happen without that solid document. So.
That means come to the next meeting for the public.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean,
from the designers.
I don't want to keep seeing stuff on Facebook about how, this, that, we don't care, we don't whatever. And it's like, that doesn't help anything at all. And we have made every effort to make it open and transparent and let everybody know what we are doing, what we're trying to do. And if we could just have some more input from the public so that we can get this right and we can get it correct and we can get it to a majority. We're gonna make everybody happy, we get it. But to make it correct and the best that we can, it takes the team, and the team is us. It's the city, it's the constituents, it's the workers, it's everybody, and we need that input. And I can't stress that enough at all, so.
Mr. Orsini?
I don't think anything we've talked about today was a surprise to Sean. He's well aware of where we are. He knows where the work needs to be done. What I'm encouraged by most is there's open support. I think there's always been support, but there's open support to allocate your time accordingly. Do the things that you're aware of that need done. The only thing I have to offer is as you run into sticking points, hurdles, don't bear that burden on your own. Bring it back.
Yeah.
Let us know what's going on, and we'll use all the tools that we have available to help you.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Mr. Green?
So, kind of to beat a drum here, nothing happens without water and sewer, I don't think. So, but they all tie together, so it's interesting. If we don't get the water and sewer out there, the annexation kind of becomes a moot point, and so does the zoning. So I think that's number one for me. If we don't get all that together, we're kind of just managing a big HOA here, if we don't get that done. So our ability to grow and the ability of our neighbors to grow is going to be in conflict if we don't get those things figured out. Because if we can't grow and we can't do the things that we want to do, somebody will. That's just the reality of it. And through how the townships work and things like that, they have things in place where, they can kind of go along that vein. So I want to see that. Obviously zoning, design review, that comes in. I've been working on that. I'm in a unique position because I've been on council just a little bit, like maybe a month or more longer than, Donnie and John. Not as long as everybody else, but I did zoning for a couple years before that. So I've been in the mess, but not in the mess. Zoning was my main focus when I was there, and I didn't like how it was going. I didn't like the conversation, which is why I led to council. So I know zoning, that's where I come from. So it was being reviewed for 5 years before I was there, and then I did 2 years of review. We thought we saw the light at the end of the tunnel, and it turned out to be a freight train. So that's kind of where we're at. But I'm excited about it. I want to keep working forward. We need that. It all goes hand in hand. And the last thing, you guys are going to love this, but I'll die on the hill, and it makes me remember the simpler times when I ran for office, but I want that splash pad. So,
Hey, I gave you homework for that, so.
I want that splash pad. And also, we have, as a city, we have a lot of focuses. And as a city that runs and operates efficiently, you don't have City of Columbus just stand there looking at one project. I know we're a lot smaller. Our staff situation has been an issue with having meetings and things like that and trying to juggle that schedule. We haven't been able to operate as efficiently, but multifaceted approach. I don't want to lose some of these smaller projects that we have going in other areas of the city, as far as parks, the fun things, the amenities people look for. I don't want to lose sight of that either. So I know that that's going to be, a tertiary point of emphasis, but I'd still like to see some things like that. We're working on the Dora. We're working on food truck things, some things like that. So I want to see those progress too.
Ms. Hendren?
I do think, well, we know zoning is very important. And I was pleased with what Tim Bubb said about Southwest looking. It's not a sure thing. Because I think that's important to us. And we are very fortunate to have Jack, who knows water from the ground up from after 40-some years. He knows Johnstown.
Underground.
And
Ground up and.
yes, ground up. And yes, I do like the idea of the Ordora. We need to get that. I think it would be a good thing for the city. Annexation is very important. I hear my son talking about it all the time, so zoning, I guess, and the design review is very important. So that's it.
So the reason why I wanted to do this tonight is just so Sean, I want it to be a very open process with the city, with council, what Sean's doing, that it's just not one or two people controlling it, that the public knows what council's focus is on for Sean to do. You've got the input. I think you have your marching orders where to start and focus.
Yeah,
and it's been your focus all along.
It's pretty consistent with where I've been at. Water, sewer, I mean, that's critical in the expansion, not just for what we're doing currently with, the 3 million gallon expansion, but we've got to think probably a little bit broader, depending on the types of uses that you want to have in an economic development conversation. So that needs to be emphasized, and I bring that up from a protectionary standpoint, and MKSK did a phenomenal job last week of pointing out, 2 million gallons is wonderful, but is 2 million gallons going to get you to where you're going to put up a firewall from outside entities trying to be inside your area? And that doesn't mean we need to be annexing all the way out there, but as far as a land preservation standpoint, and I've got another idea cooking up that I'm going to tee off to you guys, and I will give you a little taste of that tonight. I'd like for some kind of conversation of an article I read in Granville has done this, and that's some type of land preservation trust. I think it's a cool concept. I think it could work for some of what we're doing, not all, but that's something that's really neat, and there could be a conversation and a partnership with the township. Granville Township's actually the one that did it. So, like I said, sidebar, give you a little teaser. If you want to Google it, you can, and then you'll get some conversations later. But annexation, water, sewer, planning, all those things go hand in glove. Daily operations is another part of it. So trying to balance all those. Daily operations, we are with a third-party finance, so a lot of the times those things fall on my lap. Just with the water facility that we're going through, the loan applications, that typically goes to finance. That's landing in my arena. So just so you know, I say this somewhat as a defense to why I'm not able to get to other things. I don't have a finance department in-house, so whenever those documents have to be filled out by OWDA or DFA, that's something that requires my attention because I think it's important. So HR, it's not any mystery that we're currently going through negotiations. That starts this week, so that's part of the reality that I have to do as well. Zoning permits, we still have zoning permits coming in, so just letting you know, like I said, somewhat defending of sometimes if there's a request that it's not always met immediately. Try to get to them as quickly as possible, but I have buckets that I look at. One bucket's daily operation, the other bucket's water and sewer, the other bucket is planning and annexation and protecting the boundaries. So I've tried to put them into about 4 different buckets, and I keep focusing on those. If you want me to pour more effort into one of those buckets, let me know. But I think they're all integrated and affect one and the same. So let me know if I'm going in a wrong direction, and I'll be happy to accommodate and do whatever you feel is the most important. You're the elected individuals, and you give me the guidance that you want to see happen in the city, so appreciate it.
So for other business, that was my main thing. I did want to let everyone know we had Morpsey here today with many different municipalities throughout the region, Morrow County, Knox, Licking, Delaware, all over. It was a good meeting. There was something else. One second. I think that's it. Did you have anything tonight, Sean?
Yes, and I want to be super sensitive to time. It's at 8:40, but I'm springing this on you. I wanted to have an executive session to discuss, like I said, I apologize for it, but things are moving obviously quickly. To consider the appointment, employment, dismissal, discipline, promotion, demotion, compensation of a public employee or official. I can probably just give you an update, but I do need some feedback so that we can move forward in a direction, and it obviously deals with some staffing. Could be in a positive way. So I wanted to have that conversation. So after you get done with any other items that you may have, I would just simply request that first, council waives its rules of the 24-hour notice for an executive session. I need to make a motion for that, and then to go into executive session for, and I can give you that whenever the time comes, if you desire to go into executive session. So.
Okay. Ms. Hendren, do you have anything else for other business?
Yes, downtown Johnstown is working with Steve Dyer, and I know this is a lot of work because I've done it before. He's planning a run June 10th. I hope everybody goes out, runs,
I'm training
walks.
for it.
I started training.
Runs. I plan on it.
I'm gonna race you.
And it's going to be we will have our Spring Fest like 5 o'clock in the afternoon, right after the run, so.
We should have a
Anyway.
council race on that one.
I hope everyone gets involved,
I'll win.
because
Charlie probably will.
Steve's working hard on it.
Can you walk?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Walk,
Just
run.
want to make sure we
I
can.
hope he has one for children, because that brings out a lot of people.
Yeah,
I'm going to mention it to him.
We tried to do a quarter K with beer at the end, but not this year.
yeah, that would motivate me to run, sorry. I'm
have
still a
anything,
walker.
I don't know. But
Okay. John, do you have anything?
What's that date on that?
June 10th.
Thank you.
June 10th.
I don't know quite, I know that Spring Fest starts at 5. I'm not quite sure what time the run starts.
To the 5K?
Yeah,
5K?
I think it's fine.
I would say 5K.
Mr.
But
Orsini?
he has been working on a lot.
Yeah, I'm excited.
You're running an hour?
Nicole, do you have anything? One other item that I had written down, I couldn't remember. I was asked to meet with Intel and Bechtel, their construction manager, last week. They want to be active in letting the mayor of New Albany and the mayor of Johnstown know what's coming before it happens. That's their plan to do. I talked to them. There's a couple different projects that Bechtel is thinking about working on in Johnstown. They want to work with the city. They want to volunteer. They're going to have a lot of laborers, different people that they want to get active in our city, do volunteer projects. I referenced the American Legion building to them because they have drainage issues over there and they need help with that building. So he was very excited. The manager of Bechtel is a 26-year Army veteran. He just got out not too long ago. They would like to have a time where we can have 3 council members come down there and meet with them. They would like to meet with our council members 3 at a time, go over some things, drive you out to the site and show you. So if you're interested in that, let me know. We can start setting up that so you can go out there and see everything. So I think you'll be very impressed with the head of Bechtel and some ideas he has. So that's all I have. Do I have a motion to?
Mayor, I have.
Sorry, go ahead.
One thing, if I could.
Yes, sir.
I'm gonna jump back a little bit and reference this ordinance 5-2023. I want to talk just real briefly about this ordinance. The employee came to me on this, and we have a competitor for his services that has offered him $5 an hour more than what we were paying. And he said he loves working at Johnstown, he'd like to stay, and he said, I will forego the $5 if I could get half of that and stay in Johnstown. Now, this request came 2 weeks ago, and it was brought up in the Finance Committee meeting. And I told him that I'd hope to have some sort of resolve for him, because he has to make a decision whether he's gonna go to the city of Columbus or Johnstown. And he's been patient for 2 weeks. And I guess I kinda expected there would be a vote on it tonight, and there wasn't. So to go along with this, I just want to tell you, over the years, Johnstown has trained employees that have worked at Plain City, they work at Greenville, they work at Pickerington, they work at Westerville, they work at Columbus. We need to get to the point, we need to retain instead of retrain. Now, the $2.50 he's asking for is well within the original scale. I know the new scale is tabled, you guys are still working on it, but it's well within the original scale he's at. And maybe you won't vote tonight. Can I get some sort of consensus? Because he has to make a decision. Is he gonna move on, or is he gonna stay? And I thought he did a very, more than fair offer, because he likes working at Johnstown. He said, I'll stay for just half of what the offer is. To get his current certification, it would take 3 years for an employee to start from the ground up, and that's if he passes the test. Last I checked, there's a 30 to 35% passing rate. Sean is busy, and I know we've talked about how busy he is, but as I get deeper and deeper into these water plant and sewer plant design and discussions, I don't have time to run the plant. And if he leaves, that's how tight our staffing is. I'm gonna have to take a shift at the plant. And to get somebody trained is gonna be a real rough situation, and particularly, there are no licensed operators out there. If we put an ad out for what he's currently making, you're not gonna get any applicants. So, my question is, maybe we can't vote tonight, I don't know, but he's gonna want some type of consensus. Is that legal or able to do, just to get a consensus?
Well, Mr. Leggett, one of the things that we have to do before we can even look at doing something like that is the money has to be appropriated. If you look at the ordinance, the money was appropriated to be able to give him those raises.
Well, I know
And it's up to the city manager then to institute the raises, correct?
If you all appropriate the funds, then I can
Do
give
whatever you want
out.
with it. And so that's what we did, is we appropriated the money to be able to give him his raise. So it's not like the
But it
traditional.
wasn't voted on.
It doesn't have to be, that can be a city manager decision.
The raise doesn't have to be voted on, but the money appropriated does.
And that's what we did, is we appropriated the money. If you read it, it was to give 2 extra people.
I did read it, so, but it's not in effect, correct?
It,
Ordinances require 2 readings to go into effect unless.
oh, I see what you're saying.
Pass it by
Or it's an
emergency.
emergency.
I see what you're saying. I see
Okay.
what you're saying now.
Yeah, I did read
Okay.
it, I understand.
Okay.
that.
So yes, to go through the process.
Sorry.
Typically, ordinances take 2 readings.
I was thinking it was the, I had them backwards.
No, you're
Resolution.
fine. There's a lot on the agenda tonight. So introduction, and then the second meeting, you have the reading. Or you can pass it as an emergency. You would have to waive the second reading, and then make a motion to go for an emergency, if that is the desire of council. You can certainly do that. It's well within your ability, so.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, go ahead.
I don't think this raises to a situation of emergency, not that it's not important to retain employees. But in a case like this, the village manager, again, position, not person, has the ability to retain the employee, whether it's appropriated or not. They just put themselves in a situation to account for us based upon how they're managing the budget. The money is there, it's just already been allocated after appropriation. So if he could reallocate the money any way he wants, he would just have to take it from someone else. So to raise the level of emergency, appropriations required to make a small deviation from the budget. I just don't think it does. It's an employee needs reassurance, you know, that would be between his department head and the city manager to give him that reassurance.
I could understand where that employee is, and I understand Jack's frustration. I'm sure he's trained many, many people, and they're gone. And we have to start retaining people. I mean, this is going to be a big city. We have to keep them.
Yes, go ahead.
That's a bigger conversation which we're having.
Yeah.
Our compensation total package doesn't fit in necessarily the needs of the employees that we have. Our medical situation is fantastic. Our compensation situation is not. So we have been in discussions on looking at how do we reset the total cost versus the total benefit of the employees. It's a much bigger conversation. And we just want to make sure that the entire situation for an employee is beneficial. And there's lots of little details and other things underneath of that, but that is all being reviewed currently.
Mr. Mayor, if I could
Yes.
comment off of what Bob's going at. So, yes, I could authorize the raise for both employees. The situation I run into is if I get to the end of the year, obviously I've already spent the money that's been appropriated for an entire year. And if you don't bless the new appropriations, I then tell somebody at the end of the year, you gotta stop working. So the other reason that I bring it up is this is not a typical year. Before we have carryover, well, we have carryovers, but before we don't spend outside of our revenues. So our expenses are typically within the revenue spectrum. Currently, we are drawing from, not necessarily with water and sewer, that operationally has a little bit more give, so there may be a conversation there, but we would be taking from the carryover. So we would be taking from a negative balance and reducing that overall balance further. So anytime that happens, I'm also super sensitive. It's not a situation where I'm like, well, we got $100 in revenue, we only spent 80, I can throw another 5 at it, we're still under budget. This is a situation where I got $100, I need 120, and I'm gonna take $20 out of the piggy bank to do that. So breaking it down into simplistic terms, but that's the situation we're in. Like I said, normally I wouldn't probably go to you all with this proper procedure, but that's where we're at. So if you want, I can do that, but I don't want it to come back and bite me in the butt where you're like, hey, we're out of money and you gotta lay somebody off because we don't have the money and we don't want to appropriate, we don't want to go into debt. So
Well, I think-
I'm covering my butt basically.
All right, and I appreciate that. And my concern is every time someone gets a comp change or wants a comp change, it becomes an emergency situation that requires immediate action from the council, which will limit the ability to review, evaluate, have conversations. This isn't the case in this situation, but I think the process is in place to manage these situations. Everything you said, I agree with. It's absolutely how it works. I mean, it's a fact. But to make a comp change an emergency,
Such precedent.
I think if you decide tomorrow that you say, okay, go ahead, we're gonna go ahead and give this raise, then it's, council knows that that's what you did. And next week, when it comes down to time to vote on this, council knows that. So it's on council then to leave you hanging dry if they decide not to pass it, or to pass it and put the funds there for that, if that's what you decide.
Good to go.
I see a nod,
Has he received his offer yet from Columbus?
$31 an hour.
So he did get an offer? Okay.
I'll get with you tomorrow if that works.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
That'd be great.
Do we have a motion to?
waive
Waive rules.
Yes. You made the motion?
make a motion to waive rules of council to enter an executive session, 24-hour.
So we didn't know about this ahead of time?
What?
About this executive session?
Yesterday was when this kind of came about, so.
I'm not saying that we don't need to do it, I'm just saying, I like to give the notice and
Oh,
try to stick to the protocol on this.
100%. What I'm gonna tell you, I literally had the conversation with the individual yesterday at around 1 o'clock, so that's where I'm at. And you don't have to go into it, it's
We can wait till next time.
whatever.
No, I'm saying, well, it's gonna happen. I'm just saying,
No,
you know where I said this
understand.
3 meetings ago.
I'm a process guy
I'm
too.
not a fan
But-
of,
but with
not a
legal-
fan of waiving the rules and.
But with legal proceedings, you don't know when they're coming up, that you have to.
Wait, there's a motion on the table, we gotta go through
Yeah.
that then.
Okay, so there was a motion.
Motion by Bob, is there a second?
I'll second.
No, this part.
Bob Orsini?
No, the discussion part.
I'm good.
Okay, yes.
This motion is to waive the 24-hour rule to have executive session.
Yes.
Yes, okay. John Merriman?
Yes.
Mayor Barnard?
Yes.
Ryan Green?
No.
Sharon Hendren?
Yes.
Charlie Campbell?
Yes.
Nicole Shook?
Yes.
I have to make the motion to go into executive session.
Do it.
Now we have to make the motion to go into executive
Do you want to make the motion?
Read it off. I'll make a motion to.
You need the wording.
Yes.
We're legally compliant. Let me pull it up.
Tracy, can I get
Cheat sheet.
sometime a cheat sheet on what the motions are for executive session, so I have them for each council meeting, so I can read them?
from there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Turn on the one up here.
All right, if you can read, there, number 1.
To consider the appointment, employment, dismissal, discipline, promotion, demotion, or compensation of a public employee or official, or the investigation of charges or complaints against the public employee, official, licensee, or regulated individual, unless the public employee, official, licensee, or regulated individual requests a public hearing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Did you get that, Teresa?
I got it.
Which will include the city manager and council only,
No business.
with no business to follow.
Okay. Is there a second?
And who do you want to attend?
I'll
I
second.
already told him.
Okay.
I didn't hear that part.
I said the city manager and all of council with no business to follow.
Gotcha.
I'll second.
All right. John Merriman?
Yes.
Mayor Barnard?
Yes.
Ryan Green?
Yes.
Sharon Hendren?
Yes.
Charlie Campbell?
Yes.
Nicole Shook?
Yes.
Bob Orsini?
Yes.
Keep it in there.
Yeah.
All right, you want to stay in here? Do you want to go next door?
We can stay
In
here.
here,
Okay, kind of figured.
cold
If
outside.
you give me a
On this
minute,
meeting?
that way I won't have to wait till tomorrow. I'll talk to Jack. No.
Yeah.
Will somebody note what
Never.
for me?
Never.
We will.
Thank you.
From a cell phone or from the clock?
What time you adjourn the meeting?
Yes.
Yeah, from that clock over there. Is it even right?
Is it right?
It used to not be.
And Terry as well.